Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the invisible biological forces that govern our rest, our resilience, and quite literally, our entire human operating system. We often tend to think of our health in terms of isolated, separate parts, but today we're going to completely flip that script. We're going to view the human body as this incredibly complex, deeply interconnected master network, and explore a phenomenon that forces us to question pretty much everything we think we know about sleep, energy, and human biology. Think about this for a second. Why does the human body suddenly demand movement exactly when it most needs rest? For millions of people, the very moment they lie down and try to sleep, this overwhelming, almost invisible urge just forces them to move their legs. Now, we aren't going to frame this as just some simple cramp or a minor nighttime annoyance. We're actually going to treat this condition like a biological crime scene. It's a profound mystery and a massive signal coming from deep within your nervous system.
Section 1, The Midnight Mystery. Uncovering the hidden mechanisms of a restless system.
So, in our investigation, every single symptom is a clue. When your body actively works against its own baseline survival need for sleep, it's screaming that a critical system has been compromised. And this completely reframes what we traditionally call restless leg syndrome. It is absolutely not a leg issue. It is a sensory motor network disorder. Basically, it's a systemic failure of communication across the brain's cortico-strato-thalamo-limbic circuits. Think of that as the main superhighway between your sensory processing, your motor control, and your emotions. When this network gets unstable, the entire system just loses its ability to power down. And that urge to move? Yeah, that's really just the tip of the iceberg here. Beneath the surface, there's this invisible symptom cascade happening. We're talking about severe sleep fragmentation, daytime cognitive impairment, and a hyper-aroused nervous system that is literally fighting itself. This systemic instability severely impacts your longevity, your emotional resilience, and your overall human performance. It's a perfect example of how biology influences behavior and how that behavior, in turn, influences the trajectory of your entire life. Section 2, The Illusion of Normal, when standard blood tests hide a starving brain. Okay, so what actually causes this network to crash in the first place? Well, it comes down to one of the most fascinating paradoxes in modern neurology. You see, a standard blood test might show perfectly normal, completely healthy systemic iron levels in your body, but that's an illusion, because deep within the central nervous system, in regions like the substantia nigra, the iron levels can be dangerously depleted. Basically, what's circulating in your peripheral blood does not reflect the starving reality inside your brain. And this hidden vulnerability really exposes itself when the human operating system goes under extreme metabolic stress. Just look at the numbers. In the general population, this disorder affects maybe 3 to 5% of people. But during gestation, when a pregnancy causes the body's iron demands to absolutely skyrocket, that prevalence spikes up to 25%. And in end-stage renal disease, where chronic inflammation severely alters how iron is mobilized, up to 68% of patients experience this exact network crash. The underlying stress is what reveals the hidden flaw in the system. Now, if you ever needed proof that the brain completely operates by its own set of rules, consider this profound scientific revelation. There are patients with hemochromatosis, which is a genetic condition where the body actually absorbs dangerously high amounts of iron. But guess what? They can still exhibit low iron in their brainstem. This proves that the brain's iron regulation is this highly isolated, walled-off fortress. It can completely fail, entirely independently of what the rest of the body is doing. Section 3, A Starving Brain. The catastrophic failure at the blood-brain barrier. To really understand this localized starvation, we have to zoom way in on the microscopic border control of the brain, the blood-brain barrier. The research reveals what is essentially a microsabotage. Elevated levels of a very specific microRNA known as miR-124-3P are acting as epigenetic saboteurs. They literally destroy the mRNA instructions that tell the barrier to build transferrin receptors. So your brain is crying out for iron, but the actual cellular machinery needed to import it has been dismantled. And this transport breakdown happens in a massive cascade. First, the iron-carrying proteins in your blood try to bind to receptors on the blood-brain barrier, a process called transcytosis. But because those receptors were sabotaged, a transport blockade occurs, completely trapping the iron out in the bloodstream. Ultimately, this results in total system starvation. The iron never reaches the glial cells and neurons. It leaves the brain's highest performance engines sitting there completely without fuel. And missing that fuel is absolutely catastrophic. You see, iron isn't just some metal floating in your blood. In the brain, it is the critical cofactor for synthesizing dopamine. It's essential for your mitochondria to create energy, and it's required to maintain myelin, which is the insulation protecting your neural wiring. Without it, your brain literally loses its ability to produce neurotransmitters, generate energy, and insulate its own networks. Section 4. The dopamine overdrive. The brain's desperate, maladaptive attempt to save itself. This starvation triggers what scientists actually call the Great Paradox. I mean, you'd probably assume an iron-starved brain would just produce less dopamine, right? Well, it actually does the exact opposite. Because iron deficiency degrades the structural integrity of your dopamine receptors, the brain realizes its signals just aren't getting through. So, in a desperate, maladaptive attempt to save itself, the brain dramatically turns up the volume, creating this chaotic, hyper-dopaminergic state. Watch how this biological trap snaps shut over a 24-hour cycle. During the day, your iron is at a baseline, but the receptors are already degraded. Then, as evening approaches, your body's natural circadian rhythm naturally causes iron levels to drop to their lowest physiological point. And that is the breaking point. The hyperdopaminergic signaling fails entirely, and by night, the whole system just crashes. Descending motor pathways are disinhibited, meaning the brakes are cut, and it forcefully demands movement exactly when the body is desperately trying to rest. The end result is just absolute chaos in the nervous system. The central iron deficiency reduces adenosine A1 receptors, which basically removes the brain's natural brake mechanism. And without that brake, excitatory systems like glutamate and noradrenaline act as a stuck accelerator, going into severe hyperactivity. You literally have no brakes and a stuck accelerator. This is what links your brain chemistry directly to that profound emotional and physical exhaustion. So why does understanding this hidden mechanism actually matter for your longevity? 13%. That's why. Research shows a 13% lower incidence of cardiovascular disease when this specific network instability is properly treated. Think about that. Fixing a sleep-disrupting brain state actually protects the human heart. It just proves how deeply interconnected we really are. Your sleep influences your nervous system influences your heart, and your heart influences your entire lifespan. Section 5. Restoring the network. Decoding the genetic architects and protecting human longevity. To truly fix this system, we have to look at the original source code. Up to 80%. That is a staggering number of primary cases that report a positive family history. This tells us that this biological mystery is heavily driven by genetic inheritance. It's programmed right into the body long before any lifestyle or environmental factors ever come into play. So who are these genetic architects? Well, the MEIS1 gene alters iron management right at the level of the brain tissue itself. Then you have BTBD9, which literally drives enhanced excitability in those super fragile dopaminergic neurons. And MP2K5 and SK1, they modulate central iron networks during early development. These specific genes program a vulnerability into your corticostriatal circuits decades before that first midnight symptom ever even appears. The absolute crucial takeaway from this explainer today is this. Correcting the human operating system requires us to look way beyond the obvious. It requires abandoning the illusion of standard peripheral blood tests. We simply cannot rely on what the blood says when the brain is walled off and actively starving. We have to treat the central nervous system's unique metabolic and iron demands directly. I want to leave you with this final thought. We've just uncovered how a flaw in a microscopic barrier can completely crash your brain's dopamine networks, ruin your sleep, and threaten your heart, all while standard tests are telling you everything is perfectly fine. If your brain's invisible operating system can be starving for nutrients while your blood is completely full, what other hidden biological mysteries are silently shaping your life right now? Biology is a mystery just waiting to be decoded. Stay curious, keep investigating, and I'll see you in our next explainer.